Marion, I understand you're the chair of the Friends of Leazes Park. You're also a season ticket holder of the mighty Toon Army. You used to be the chair of the Newcastle Fans Liaison Committee. You also live in Leazes Terrace.
That's right.
I understand you organise all the student raves, is that right?
Absolutely.
Can you get us a ticket?
Oh, it's free.
Since 1892, when Newcastle United was formed, there's been tension between the club, Newcastle City Council, local conservation groups and residents from the area over potential plans to expand St James's Park. Never more so than now, since the Saudi-led PIF bought the club back in October. And not only now do we fill our 52,000 or so seats in that fantastic stadium, but we've got about 30,000 people and fans on a waiting list for a season ticket. So can St James's Park be expanded? Well, that's the million-dollar question. Very recently, architectural plans of an 80,000-seater stadium have emerged from an architect called John Hendry, which was the original brainchild of a developer called Sean Wade. But there's some significant factors to take into consideration that could scupper those ideas. So in this video, I take the most comprehensive, evidence-based look at all the possibilities. I've even chatted to some significant stakeholders in this story, but also discussed some of the nonsense you'll sometimes come across. So if you're interested in Newcastle United and St James's Park, you don't want to miss this video, because I think this is the most comprehensive video that you'll have seen so far on this particular subject. And I'm going to do this all by filming in a very old, unique and original merchant house, a Grade 1 listed building called Alderman Fenwick House down on Pilgrim Street. It's coming up. Now before we start talking about St James's Park, we need to have a look at this fantastic building. So this is Alderman Fenwick House, a Grade 1 listed building, and it's one of the only surviving original merchants' houses here in Newcastle, built in 1670, and it's had some amazing history and different uses over the centuries. Now built in 1670, the interior features consist of excerpts of the original layout together with the alterations from the 17th and 18th century, but even to modern day renovation. Now the first documented evidence of Pilgrim Street dates back to 1230, showing evidence that houses along this route were built early in Newcastle's history. And back in medieval times, Pilgrim Street was a major thoroughfare through Newcastle and was protected by a gate in the old town wall called Pilgrim Gate. Now Alderman Fenwick House gets its name from Thomas Winship. He was a member of the Tanners Company of Newcastle, and it was his daughter, Sarah Fenwick, who inherited the house in 1695, and it was her husband Nicholas Fenwick who renovated the house in 1700. But the name Alderman Fenwick House didn't actually appear till 1973 in James Corbridge's map of Newcastle. Interestingly, the building was converted, and between 1781 and 1883 it was a coaching inn for travellers, and it was called the Queen's Head Inn. And it was during this period as well when Charles Turner converted the house into the coaching inn. They acquired number 100 Pilgrim Street and turned it into the two buildings that you see today, with a south tunnel and a north tunnel for horses to gain access through to the stables. And in the 1850s, even Charles Dickens stayed here whilst doing some of his readings in the old music hall next to where the Granger Market is now. Anyway, let's have a look inside. I feel really important sat in this chair. So this room I'm in now is called the Great Hall. So all the way through its history, when it was a merchant's house and as the Queen's Head Inn, this would have been a main dining hall. Between 1883 and 1962, the Liberal Club of Newcastle took over the building, and in tradition of the building, it continued to be used as the Great Room, where they would entertain, they would have meetings, but also have lavish dinners. So this was a really important building. Walking through the building today, you'll get a feel of what it's like, of what the building looked like. Even walk up the staircase, it slants to one side. There's some window frames in the building which I believe to be from the original building when it was a merchant's house. It's fascinating and is now under the management of Central Space. And today the building thrives as a boutique office and event space. So it's now available to hire for corporate and creative uses like staff training and weddings, art exhibitions, Christmas events, product launches, but also for general office use. And most recently, the south tunnel of the building has just opened as a coffee kiosk where you can now just sit outside and take in the views of the redevelopment of Pilgrim's Quarter. I love unique places like this, and if you want to take advantage of a house like this, just get in touch. I'll leave the website on the screen here if you want to book it for a wedding or some sort of event. It's a fantastic place. Just get in touch with them. There's a girl called Sarah here who's been really helpful. She's really friendly, and she'll show you around. So I hope you found that fascinating. I certainly did. I love history and I love buildings like this. So where I'm stood now is obviously on the rooftop of Alderman Fenwick House, right next to the cupola with the wind vane on the top. We're directly across the road from Bank House, this new 14-storey tower block that's been built, which is part of that whole Pilgrim Street redevelopment, and Pilgrim's Quarter just a little bit further up the road. Just in front of me here you can look down to Swan House roundabout and the town bridge, which you can't quite see. You've got St Nicholas's Cathedral just over there, but over my right shoulder in the distance there, I hope you can see, is the mighty St James's Park. Now the first real example of tensions between the club and Newcastle City Council happened in the late 60s when Newcastle was a European football powerhouse and we were regularly getting gates of over 60,000, so they looked to increase the capacity. Now that's where the conflict with the council happened under Thomas Dan Smith. They had ideas to turn St James's Park into some sort of multi-sport complex. The club had other ideas, and Newcastle threatened to move just north of Gosforth, where the nature reserve is now, to have the stadium up there. Thankfully, Newcastle City Council relented and we managed to stay at St James's Park. Fast forward to 1997 under the stewardship of Sir John Hall. Sir John Hall spent 2 years coming up with a development plan to have a new stadium called Leazes Park, which was situated and straddled over Castle Leazes and current Leazes Park, almost touching the lake there. They put the planning application in, but it was met with some fierce resistance, and that gave birth to the Friends of the Leazes Park conservation movement. And this is pre-internet as well, and they managed to get together an army of protesters, if you like, and 36,000 people signed a petition, which was roughly the capacity of St James's Park at the time, to have these plans blocked, and it worked. So that gives you kind of a sense of the problems that St James's Park has with being a city centre kind of building locked stadium, because we have a conservation area which was set up in 1974 called the Leazes Conservation Area, which basically runs around the perimeter of St James's Park, which gives conservation protection obviously, but we have Leazes Terrace, the Grade 1 listed buildings, which have certain rights in law for property protection because of light. But you have Leazes Park just north of the stadium, which covers a third of the Leazes Park Conservation Area. That's Grade 2 listed land. Now back in April just this year, a local developer, a guy who's a director of his own company called Sean Wade, had been putting together some stadium plan ideas to slightly change the look of St James's Park to maximise its capacity to about 80,000, and he put out a tweet back in April with a bit of a diagram what it would look like. But the basic concept of his idea is to within the current boundary of St James's Park, but his idea is to move the pitch northwest about 20 metres or so, but in effect have to rebuild the stadium into something that would look a bit like a Yorkshire pudding, and would look a bit like the Nou Camp at Barcelona, with a lower end which would be the east stand coming to larger ends, centering around the Milburn stand. And certainly Sean is absolutely adamant that this can be achieved. This was on the back of an idea back in 2019, where an architect called John G. Henry, he's an Irish guy, Man U supporter, he's a hotel architect based in the Middle East, and he has a dentist called the Geordie Dentist, and they got chatting about complexities of extension of the stadium. So John put together an architect's drawing of basically turning St James's Park 90 degrees, so that's had a lot of tongues wagging. I don't know if that's achievable or not. Personally, I think it's an awful plan, an awful idea. It's even more lopsided than what it is now, so I'm not a fan of that. But just a couple of weeks after Sean Wade did that tweet about his idea, John G. Henry then somehow published his own architectural drawings based on that idea of moving the pitch northwest, towards the northwest corner of St James's Park, and he's provided a lot of details with his drones of how to achieve a mass expansion of St James's Park to about 80,000. I should say there has been talk of expanding the stadium to 100,000. My understanding is through FA rules you can't have a stadium that's bigger than the national stadium, so you can't have a stadium that's bigger than 90,000 anyway. There's also the problem of if you were to completely redevelop the stadium, completely basically rebuild it, where would Newcastle United play for 2 years? Personally, I'm not a fan of the idea of playing at Stadium of Light. I just think that's unworkable for obvious reasons. But Sean Wade has come up with a fantastic idea, copied that they do in the Middle East at the moment, where you can put together kind of a flat pack stadium which arrives in shipping containers. They use the containers as part of the base, pop up these stadiums, 40, 50, 60,000 for a temporary amount of time, then dismantle it, put it back into shipping containers. And he seems to think that if we were to rebuild St James's Park, we could do something like that. They could sail the ships down the Tyne and set up the new stadium somewhere else. Now that has problems as to where they would do that. Could they do it on the town moor? Well, technically it wouldn't be a permanent structure. From what I know of its custodianship with the Freemen of Newcastle, a significant structure like that, even for a year or two, would probably cause significant damage to the environment. Bearing in mind the town moor is also going through a period of conservation and sustainability through planting thousands of trees. I don't think that would go down well. I don't think they would allow that. You've also got the land just north of the racecourse, which could be considered. I don't think that'll happen. It's currently being discussed by the club to have the training facilities, so I can't see that happen. But there's also the option of gated stadium and having temporary stands around that. I don't think that's going to be straightforward. A lot of great ideas there. I don't know what's going to happen. Personally, I can't see a complete rebuild of St James's Park happening because of those significant considerations. But what about the complications we still have with Leazers Park, the conservation area and Leazers Terrace? Well, for that I'm going to speak to a local lady called Marion Williams. So there's lots of complications in terms of conservation and listed buildings in this area. I believe we're on the boundary of the Leazers conservation area where we stood right now, and there's a lot of talk now of stadium expansion possibilities. Hypothetically, if St James's Park was to kind of be rebuilt and moved 20 metres or so into Leazers Park, what would happen now, 25 years on from the complications in 97?
I think it would be a different conversation. I think with the way that our parks don't have the funding that they need, and government is whittling away the money we're not making any more, the conversation is the trade-off in taking some of Leazers Park but putting some money into the park, bring it back to its former glory, repair all the old buildings and the pavilion, put in a decent children's playground, do all the things that we struggle to do without the money. It's a conversation to be had.
So hypothetically, Merdad Gadusi, Jamie Rubin and Amanda Stavely give you a ring saying, Marion, we've got an idea. You'd be willing to sit down and have a conversation about it?
I'd certainly want to be part of that conversation alongside Urban Green, who run the parks now and are continually looking for ways to fund their work.
Yeah, I imagine you're quite conflicted.
Absolutely.
Being the Newcastle season ticket holder, but also heavily involved with conservation and protecting the heritage of Newcastle.
Yeah, I mean, I choose to live in a listed building and all that entails, and would normally say, well, I'd protect that with my life. But for me, 25 years on, do I want to live in a very different environment to the one I bought into? Being so close to my seat in the ground has, always been an immense pleasure. But I think if you just walk away and say no, that doesn't do what's right for everybody. And I think it's a conversation to be had.
Putting you on the spot, would you like to see the capacity increased here at St James's Park?
I'd like to see the capacity increased if it meant that more Geordies and ordinary folk can get a ticket there. If they're going to increase the capacity and price us all out, I'd be dead against it.
There's also some bad news about the development behind St James's Park. When the High Street group went into liquidation, there was a lot of optimism about the club buying the land back. I've been doing some digging with the planning applications into Newcastle City Council, and on the 22nd of June this year, the Strawberry Development Group have put a planning application in to basically, with some slight alterations, carry on with the project of building 4 blocks, 2 or 3 of them accommodation blocks, 1 an office block, but also some public realm facilities. That looks like that's going to go ahead, which will significantly affect what you can and can't do with the Gallagher end, but also with the metro station that's going to be remaining there. The difficulties that brings in putting some sort of structural pilings with tunnels underneath. So it's going to take some engineering wizardry to expand the Gallagher end, but we'll go back to Sean Wade's idea of moving the pitch northwest. That could alleviate a lot of those problems. So personally, I'm quite optimistic that we'll get something done in terms of expansion. That's where I think the club are going to go. I think the club are going to stay at St James's Park, be under no doubt there are some significant complications, but it's also going to take probably quite a few years to start looking at this, and they'll probably only do it when we're flirting on the edge or inside the Champions League competition. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below about the possible expansion or the relocation of the club. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up if you like the video, and if you want me to do a video about the new potential training facility location, and I mean, you know, quite a thorough one. I've been doing a lot of research, and I've been measuring land and looking at where this potential site is, etc. Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, catch you later.